to the program Walailak University Global. This program, as usual, invites scholars from around the world to share experiences and ideas with us, Walailak University community. And with us today is Professor Chris Rad, currently Chief Scientist at Yangtze Delta Center for Carbon Fiber Innovation, China, and until February, the Deputy Vice Chancellor at James Cook University, Singapore campus. Welcome, Chris, to the program, and thank you very much for joining us today. Chris, because you have had such a very interesting experience as a scholar and also as a top administrator of university, started in the UK, Nottingham, was a dean and vice president at Nottingham, and then you moved to China, and then to Singapore, working with an Australian university. Could you reflect on your many years of experience as both a top researcher, a scientist, as well as a top administrator of universities?
Yeah, that's a big question. Thank you. Okay. It's been a long time, but it's been a very enriching time, and I feel really privileged that, you know, having come from a laboratory scientist background, that's propelled me into a number of really fascinating spaces where I've got the opportunity to work with some really talented people, and also to interact with some really talented people in government, in business, and of course in other universities. But perhaps the backdrop to your question really is to try and draw some kind of contrast between, you know, a very competitive domestic situation, as you know, I would have reported to you from the UK in the 90s and early 2000s, and then contrasting that to being, you know, a foreign implant, first of all in China and more recently in Singapore, and of course we learn from all of those experiences, and we learn to adapt. If we don't adapt, of course, then we don't survive. But we learn to adapt to, I suppose, give the stakeholders the perception that you know they would like to see, and to present the assets in a way that appear to be delivering not just for me, not just for the home university, but when we're guests in another country, then absolutely about delivering locally as well. And I know that that's something that your university holds very much at its core.
But in terms of the mission or the main responsibility of universities are two main things: teaching and learning and research, high-level research. So have you observed, are there any lessons that we can draw from your experience, a changing environment or the way people do their research and teaching and learning across countries, across institutions that you have experienced?
I think we're all shaped by our environment, and if I contrasted standing in a class in the UK, which would be, let us say, 60% domestic students and 40% probably Asian students, then that would be a relatively interactive environment. And if I would push questions out, then people would answer, people would be less inhibited about getting the answer wrong or feeling embarrassed or something like that. If I contrast that to the first class I ever taught in China, oh my God, you could not imagine a bigger difference. And the amount of energy and effort that you would have to go to get any measure of interactivity, even to get the students to look at you instead of just casting their eyes down at their papers or at their laptops. That was a huge challenge, and I'm sure it's an ongoing challenge for anybody who's making that transition. But like many challenges, if you can overcome it, then it's hugely rewarding. And if you can get students who don't come from a naturally open, interactive culture to engage, then you take away a great sense of achievement. But I think the students also feel, well, actually, yeah, this is what we're paying for. This is the Western style education. This is something different than I would have got if I'd gone to Tsinghua or Beida or one of the domestic institutions.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about small class teaching, because in Thailand, what normally happens across universities in the countries is that they tend to get large number of students in one auditorium, and then teacher would get on stage and to teach them. But at Walailak University, I'm talking about the beginning, like year 1 and year 2. At Walailak University, even from year 1, from first year, we make sure that we admit about 3,000 students per year, but we make sure that we get them into small group learning environment, and to promote, as you mentioned, this interactive learning for students to get them to be close to teachers, and then to encourage them to ask questions and participate in projects so that they have their own initiatives, they work in groups, they so kind of get them to think through issues rather than getting lectures from teachers.
I think what I would say to that is that it's easier in some disciplines than others. If you look at most Western universities, to generalize, they tend to survive financially because they've got a big business school. And I mean, Nottingham in the UK, I think we would have had 6,000 students plus in our business school. In China and Ningbo, proportionately about the same. And the reality is that having a big business school enables you to run engineering, run bench sciences, run health sciences, which are much more expensive to teach. But they, of course, have to involve the kind of small group teaching and learning that you mentioned. When you've got 600 students in your first year, it's pretty challenging to break those down into a significant amount of small group teaching. You've got to find, I think, smart ways of compensating for that by having, problem-based learning, for example, by bringing in, people from industry to mentor groups on, business games or student startup or something like that, or even stepping outside the curriculum. And I don't know whether you are involved, for example, in the Enactus program here, where the students will actually create real businesses, and of course they will be mentored either by professors from...
Yeah, we haven't got that yet.
Yeah. And I think by fostering, multiple approaches to the same problem is probably the way forward.
Yes. What about research among academics? From your observations, have there been any shift in the way people perceive research, or it pretty much the same over the years, over countries, across countries?
Yeah, so, I cut my teeth in the UK system, and actually not so different from Australia with the biennial, research excellence assessment framework. I think in the early days of that, it did quite a lot to clean up the system and to make people wake up to the issues about research quality and impact and the importance of global partnerships in delivering excellence. I think the UK took it too far to the extent where there became witch hunts against people who were, perhaps getting towards the end of their career and not so much active, and the environment became somewhat unhealthy. The situation that I just left in Singapore, I would say, was actually relatively healthy, where we would say, well, okay, you can be excellent in research, you can be excellent in teaching, or maybe you've got more of a balanced scorecard. And we'll look at that, we'll work with you to improve areas where either you or we think there might be a development opportunity, but actually we will design your workload to suit your skill set, and we won't try and knock square pegs into round holes. And to my view, that actually worked pretty well, because it made people who didn't really have a research track record, and in all honesty were never going to develop one, really work at being an excellent teacher, and we'd hope that would be reflected in their teaching evaluations, whereas those who could get money or who could get published into the best journals were encouraged to, basically to live their best lives. And for me, that was a good solution. It was fair and equitable, and it also recognised the fact that, of course, we depend on tuition income to keep the lights on, but we also depend on research reputation to attract the best students and the best faculty.
Yeah, touching on Singapore, Singapore is a small country, but higher education institutions in Singapore are very highly competitive, and they are at the top level when it comes to the international rankings and all of that. And you've spent 5 years working there, rubbing shoulder with all of these people at a high level. Are there any things that you think is quite unique that get Singapore higher education universities up at the very high level on the international ranking ladder?
So, we were chatting the other day, and the thing that they often say in Singapore is, why would you make it if you can buy it? And so what Singapore has been very good at has been buying in the best foreign talent, because if you think back 20 years, NUS was up and coming, NTU was pretty ordinary organisation, but what the government has done is they've thrown money at the autonomous universities. They've brought in the best talent from around the world, and of course they don't have to fight for money in the way that I'm sure you have to here in Thailand, and certainly I would have to if I were back in the UK. So what they've deliberately set out to say is we want to have 2 or 3 global top 50 universities, and we're gonna bankroll them until they get there. What that means for everybody else, and especially if you're a private university, if you're a foreign-owned university, then unless you've got something really, really special to offer, then you won't get a look in terms of government support. As it happens, at JCU, we were very, very fortunate in that we had a couple of disciplines, notably marine science and aquaculture, where we were, arguably in the top 3 in the world. And this happened to be something that the Singapore government was really keen to access because of their aspirations to develop some measure of self-sufficiency in food production. And so we managed to get through that door, but for most foreign universities, really an impossible task, I would say.
Who else are in terms of foreign universities that are in Singapore, apart from James Cook?
So even within the Australian domain, you would find Newcastle, you would find Curtin, you'd find ANU, you'd find Deakin, you'd find RMIT. But the difference between what JCU is doing, and the others is that the others deliver through a local partner, like Navitas, like PSB Academy, and others, which are basically providing the engine room to a front end, which is the sort of the shop sign that belongs to the foreign universities. So actually, what they're doing is they're basically running franchise programs, by and large.
James Cook University, whose main campus is located in Townsville, and it has a campus in Cairns in Queensland, North Queensland, then really has quite a unique position in Singapore. The fact that you are fully a full campus, a full form of university campus.
Yeah, I would say that it's it's not unique in the region, but it's unusual. If you went to RMIT in Vietnam, you'd see something quite similar. If you go to Monash in KL or Nottingham in KL or Heriot Watt, something similar. But Singapore, because of its unique situation, it's a much more convenient solution if you want to get into the market to deliver through a third party rather than through a, what we would say a bricks and mortar operation.
Yeah, talking about the situation of higher education in Singapore, and they are just mentioned that they in terms of the world university ranking, they've ranked very high. What is your view on being a world-class university? The importance of being a world-class university, given the environment that we are in across the world. What is your view on that?
I think if we can aspire to that, then we ought to, because it's like anything. If you don't seek to grow, then the competition will eat you up. Ranking and brand value in Asia is really everything, right? I know that in the Australian market it doesn't really matter too much, and if you're an 18-year-old Australian student about to commence undergrad, then you're more likely to go to the institution that's on a convenient bus route. But in Asia, the first thing that people do, right, is they go to the QS rankings. And, a high ranking, makes you as a leader feel good. It inspires your staff. It makes your students that much prouder of the institution. It makes your alumni that much more engaged. It makes your stakeholders much more supportive. So, we all are in the business of, striving for excellence, and that's one marker. It's not the only marker, of course, but it's a highly visible one.
Right, exactly. So it's one very important indicator that people look at when they want to see among many universities which one is that they should look at. Yeah, obviously, and still, because I think you, Professor Rad, you have a very interesting, unique experience of being a British guy and then move and working in China and then in Singapore. What I'm getting at is that another issue is internationalization of higher education. Now, there are many aspects of that. And I guess the things that you've been involved in, like Nottingham's campus in China, Australian campus in Singapore, I mean, this is, I guess that sort of thing is kind of internationalization of higher education par excellence, really. Is that the case, or should we, are there anything else that when we talk about internationalization, I guess the most difficult thing is to set up campuses overseas like that, like you have been involved in, but are there other things that you think is quite important to being internationalized or being perceived or as internationalized?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the very particular circumstances around these overseas branch campuses, because it's, for any institution, it's a very interesting journey. And the level to which it's embraced by the home institution, I think, is absolutely critical. And as a participant and as an observer of these phenomenon, I've seen great examples of that, and I've seen some pretty bad examples of it as well. But also, I've seen it from both sides of the bridge, right? So when we started engineering in China, I'm the dean back in the UK. And so I'm walking up and down the corridor, knocking on doors, talking to the faculty members and trying to get them on board. You know, we need Triple E out there, we need Chem Eng out there, we need mechanical out there. And, you know, people are sucking their teeth, is the English expression, and saying, you know, they'll have terrible English, they won't be good students, they'll suck all our time up in, you know, helping them to get through the program. It's going to kill our research. You know, 100 reasons not to do it. And I cast the clock forward, you know, 10, 15 years, and I'm out there and I'm looking at these students, and they're class 1 Gaokao, if you know what that means. But basically the top draw of university entrance examinees. They're coming into our program in China, they're getting through the English, they're then transferring into the UK, and you look at the top 10 students in every class, and they're all our Chinese students from Ningbo, because they're top draw students. You know, if you know anything about the A-level system, then we're recruiting maybe B, C in the English system from the domestic market. But these students are like A star, A star, A star. If they were in the domestic system, they'd be going to Oxford, Cambridge, UCL. And so really that was something that I think nobody had a clue when they started, but the brand built, and you know, people signed up, and it became hugely competitive to get in. And you know, if you're looking for payback in terms of reputation, that's better than any dollar return.
That's a very amazing experience you had there. You know, getting into something first was quite unknown, but then it turned out to be quite rewarding. You know, from your professional and personal point of view, it's very amazing. I think you have better. But would you encourage other people? I mean, what I'm getting at, I guess, I mean, we are in a developing countries, not like from the UK or Australia, but what would you suggest when we want to embark on internationalization that we do? Are there any, you know, 5 items that like university like Walailak University should get into when we want to be, you know, internationalized?
My sense in this part of the world is that there's a huge appetite for internationalization and international partnerships of all sorts, really driven by the fact that there's a lot of new entrants like yourselves coming into QS, coming into THE, and recognizing the value of international partnerships, international collaborations in research, enlarging the proportion of international students that you've got on campus, because of course they're all playing into these indices, but actually they're good things in and of themselves. They bring diversity, they bring development opportunities for students, they bring development opportunities for faculty. And I think it's very difficult to be prescriptive about, you know, suggesting at what level you should be going in, whether it's just opening up a 2+2 program with a Canadian university, or whether it's, going full tonto and bringing in a foreign branch campus partner to share some of your beautiful campus space. What I would say is, for those institutions who are looking at offshore opportunities, then I would say it's a long game. And it's something that you've got to future-proof. Because one of the things I would remark upon is that in our China venture, I think even in my time, we went through 3 vice chancellors in the UK and therefore 3 incarnations of the University Council, and trying to make sure that new people coming in were on board and supportive of something which is a long way away and easy to be out of sight, out of mind. That's a big challenge. And also the fact that, yes, if you set the thing up correctly, there will be a financial return. But it's not going to be a fast buck. It's not the kind of thing where you can, build a pop-up operation, make some money and get out after 3 years. It's not going to happen.
Are there any chances for a university like us to get an interest from a foreign university in Western countries to be working more formally? I'm not sure whether what I'm getting at here, but not to the point of setting up campus like at Walailak, but maybe a more formal arrangement in terms of degree, programs and things like that.
I think inevitably, if you look at, let's say, the younger institutions and the more vocational institutions, and I'm speaking really here about my knowledge of the UK market, is that there's a huge level of activity in delivering, and I'm going to use the word, some people don't like it, but franchised programs into Asia, in Malaysia, in India. I'm certain also probably in your country, but because the UK market is a pretty static one, the tuition fees are capped by the government and have been capped by the government at about 9k sterling for, I think, the best part of 10 years, then actually the only way that these guys can find growth, revenue growth, is by going offshore, not necessarily with a bricks and mortar operation, but with franchise programs, with exchange programs, with 2+2 programs. So I think that the appetite is there.
Okay.
It's really, I think, about finding a good chemistry, and building up a relationship of trust and basically building a win-win arrangement.
Interesting. Yeah, good chemistry. That's a key point. Yeah. The key word. Now the 1 minute that we have left there, Chris, is where we would like you to touch on. I don't think we can have any discussion without talking about artificial intelligence role in higher education these days. What is your general view on the way that AI, artificial, particularly generative AI, that has changed the way we do things, we teach, the way we students learn?
Yeah, I think, even within our working lives, it is going to change the industry, it's going to change the environment, it's going to change the student experience. I think that as an industry, we're still groping how to engage with it in a way that feels appropriate, exposing our students to it, but not in such a way that it strips away from them the creative input. I think that there are ways to do that, but we got to take things step by step, and I think ultimately, we'll all gain, and it will, of course, not just education, but healthcare, financial services. Huge number of sectors will benefit from the successful deployment of AI, but I just think we've got to be a little bit cautious about, either embracing it, with immature technology, or by being too draconian about, banning it from the education space altogether.
Okay. Well, Professor Chris Rudd, thank you so much for your time. And Professor Rudd is here to be keynote speaker for this year's Walailak Research Convention. So thank you for spending time talking to our Walailak University community, and now today appear on the global program, WU global program. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.